Hi, I'm Miriam Laidlaw. I work for Unitech Institute of Technology as point 6 of my job, and for Waitemata District Health Board as point 4 of my job. And both roles I do e-learning type things, and I'm here on behalf of Unitec because we don't use MyPortfolio or Mahara yet at WDHB, but we have been using MyPortfolio at Unitec for the last year. And so I put together this presentation, which you can't see, on a neat little program which is open source called Twine. Oh, yay! And the fun thing about this is I then ran into issues embedding this Twine, which exports as an HTML file, into Mahara. And so you'll see here in my little collection, I've got one that's called Mahara Hui 2015 Fail, because this is what the Twine looks like when it's embedded into Mahara, which is not particularly useful for me today, but thankfully it looks a lot better when it's embedded into Moodle. So you can go to that tiny URL address up there and you can actually look at this same page and then click the thing that says click here for the presentation. I'm actually going to open it up locally so that I'm not, oh. My computer's having a bit of trouble thinking at the moment. There we go.
So what is Twine?
Twine's just a storytelling software, so it lets you create interactive stories. And so it doesn't look very pretty, but I wanted to play with the software, and by the time I'd done the whole presentation in it and discovered that I couldn't, of course it is, that I couldn't get it to look quite how I wanted it to. I'd invested so much time into doing it this way that you're going to put up with looking at a thing that looks like a website built in the 90s. All right, so I'm Miriam, I've already said that. Who am I? I work as an academic advisor at Unitec, and my specialty is in e-learning. My original job title there was Web 2.0 and Virtual Learning Environment Administrator, which was very long, and I'm so glad that I'm now academic advisor because that's a lot easier to say. But what it basically boils down to is that I'm one of a small team of people at Unitec, and I do mean small as in up until we hired William on a full-time basis, between 3 of us we were covering just over one job, just over one full-time position, 3 part-timers. Supporting Moodle, Turnitin, MyPortfolio, Blackboard Collaborate, Eco360, WordPress, Google Sites, and other Web 2 tools for the whole of Unitec.
And what did you do in your spare time?
Yeah, cried. So thankfully we've built a better base of support there now. And so a couple of years ago, we sat down and we went, we probably need some sort of e-portfolio system. What are we going to support? And we didn't necessarily want to restrict people. We didn't want to say you can't use this or you can't use that if that's what they particularly wanted to use. But we did need to think realistically because we did only have just over one full-time position supporting this for a whole institution. And so we looked at various different options. We made this wonderful chart here, and we looked at various features in WordPress, PebblePad, Mahara, Blogger, Google Sites, LinkedIn or Facebook, so sort of social networking, and Wikispaces. And we considered various aspects of each of these in a sort of chart that said yes, no, and sometimes had extra comments. So we looked at the price. That's always a first point, is can we afford it? And then how exportable is it? How portable is it for the students? Can we integrate it with single sign-on with any of our other systems? How flexible is the design of this? How compatible is it with mobile devices? Can we, since we had put so much effort into creating a nice institutional theme for our Moodle site, can we theme it? Is it W3C compliant? Does it integrate with other Web 2 tools? How much ownership do the students have of it? What are the privacy options or lack of privacy options? Does it contain some way of keeping a journal or a blog? Is there some way to comment on things? Teacher feedback on things? Is there a way to collaborate? And are there ways of having discussions? And so on and so forth. So we looked at quite a lot of different aspects of all of these different things. And we came up with a lot of yeses in a lot of places and some very key no's in some places. And so what we ended up deciding on were that we would support internally 3 major systems. And if people were wanting to use any systems outside of that, they were welcome to, but they were pretty much on their own. And so we decided on Mahara, WordPress, and Google Sites. Now, at the point that we did this chart, there were already departments at Unitec using WordPress for e-portfolios with their students quite successfully. And there were departments who had dabbled in Google Sites, because we had wairaka.com as a Google Apps account, and all our students are supplied with a wairaka.com account when they sign up. Our teachers are not, which was a small sticking point, but they could request for them to be made. So that the wairaka.com uptake was not huge. Mostly the students never checked their wairaka.com email address. They often didn't even know how to log into them, and because the teachers didn't have them automatically, there wasn't sort of a community built around that. We did have some discussions before we launched Mahara fully with a few departments who were really keen to look at e-portfolios on what the benefits and downsides were to each of the 3 systems that we were willing to support. And interestingly enough, you know, one department did decide to go with Google Sites, one did decide to go with WordPress, and one did decide to go. So we weren't trying to steer departments down one platform or another. We were really trying to have that open discussion of which best fits you, not here's the platform, how are we going to make it fit you. Then, because we looked at Mahara as one of the major things that we were wanting to support and actually promote. And so the next decision was whether we were going to host it ourselves, like we do our Moodle site, or not. And we had and it's actually still there, I think. It must be, because I took the screenshot. We have a test site, a test Mahara site on our own little subdomain. And we used that to explore the features. We put some lecturers on there who really wanted to have a look and explore and start building stuff. It was never really intended to have students on it, but there was a lecturer who sort of went, look, we understand that it's a short-term thing, it will vanish eventually, but I want my students on there and playing with it now. So we did put a lot of students, not a lot as in many, but a lot of students through there with that understanding. In the end, we did decide to go with a hosted solution for MyPortfolio, and there were some very good reasons for this. For a start, it was a very good price for a hosted solution. Kineo Pacific offered very good pricing options, and they were able to offer 1 gig of storage per user, which is well in excess of anything that we could offer hosted internally, certainly at the time that we were looking at it. Students who graduated could keep their accounts indefinitely through the alumni system that is offered through MyPortfolio. We couldn't do that. Like with Moodle, the students' accounts get disabled when students are no longer, they don't get deleted, but they get disabled when they're no longer studying with us. The same thing would have happened with any ePortfolio system that we would have hosted internally. And we don't have to worry about running upgrade projects. We upgrade our Moodle site every year. I head the project. It is a major undertaking and it takes a lot of my time away from the support, and I couldn't add MyPortfolio to my workload upgrading that. So somebody else's job. Thank goodness. So then it was a matter of, well, we've decided on the system, and we came to this decision in January, and people were like, we need it now. So in the space of like a week, we suddenly had contracts signed and money being thrown around, and our institution set up on MyPortfolio and all that sort of stuff. And it was a real rush, but it was an excited sort of rush. It was, yes, we're moving forward, we're getting things done, and we ran a whole bunch of workshops at very short notice. Thankfully, I've used Mahara in the past, so I sort of just ran into the workshops and went, what do you want to learn? Excellent, let's go. So, yeah, that was a bit of a rush. Then last year, so this was the beginning of last year, and one of the other things that was mentioned by Claire in her presentation is that we had these things called e-champions. So people who were seconded to work at Te Puna Ako with us for a year to help promote and teach and spread the e-learning goodness around Unitec, which involved quickly upskilling them in the use of the systems. So they didn't all have to learn every system as deeply as everybody else. So there were some who were focusing on this system, some who were focusing on this, etc. But everybody had to have at least a basic working knowledge of all systems. So it required very quick upskilling of people who are just teachers. Well, I say just teachers. I mean, they're, teachers are need to know a lot, but they're not trained as techie sort of people. And suddenly we're like, now you have to know this, 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 and this, and this, and this by next week. Thanks. And the other thing they did, which probably helped them in their learning journey, is they were responsible for building a lot of our help resources on Moodle for staff and students. So we now have a Moodle course for each of the core systems that we support, which we didn't have before, because I didn't have time to build them. So these guys did an awesome job doing that, and then they took over running the training sessions. And so we started our pilot, and I wrote 2013 and I meant 2014. I was a year, I just noticed that. In 2014, last year, a few departments piloted the use of MyPortfolio, including osteopathy, nursing, and Centre for Interdisciplinary Scholarship, which basically is a common semester across various departments. They come together, their students do these 8 common courses throughout the year, and then they go off into their disciplines. And so they're big users of it. And we ran a lot of workshops. And these are just some screenshots of some examples of how nursing used MyPortfolio, which if you were in Claire's presentation, you actually saw these in a lot more detail. But they used them for group work. And so instead of having the students sit down, as Claire described, with a bit of butcher's paper that then got thrown away later, or having to rely on each student making frantic notes that they're actually going to be able to decipher later, they sat down and they created MyPortfolio pages together in a group that they then could copy to their own portfolio and have as a resource. So this year, one of the things we've done is we've pushed out of a pilot and we've released it into the wild. We've upped our limit of the number of accounts, so we went to the next tier of hosting, and we basically said, excellent, everybody, off you go, whoever wants to do it can do it. And we've run a series of workshops with lecturers where we have basically, during the workshops, required them to create a MyPortfolio account so that they can see it. And the creation is easy, and I forgot to mention it before. The other good thing about the MyPortfolio account is that we do have it single sign-on with our Moodle. So students and lecturers have to go via Moodle to log into MyPortfolio. They can't log in directly to MyPortfolio. Part of this is an administrative thing. It means that we don't have to keep an eye on accounts, because if they've got a Moodle account, then they're entitled to a MyPortfolio account. So they all just click on the link during our training session, it magically takes them to MyPortfolio, and we get them started. And one of the directives from higher up is that all lecturers at Unitec, all staff at Unitec are going to be required as of this year to do X number of hours of professional development in very specific areas, which are all to do with learning and teaching. And they need to be able to provide evidence that they've done this professional development in some sort of e-portfolio system. So we've run a whole bunch of workshops about how to create your practice passport in MyPortfolio, because for us it's the easiest system to show the lecturers, because we're not having to deal with creating accounts and other passwords. They're all using Moodle, or they should all be using Moodle, so they can all use MyPortfolio. And so we're encouraging the use of MyPortfolio by getting the staff to use it for themselves. And once they see how they can use it for themselves, then we can branch out and how do you see this can be used for your students. We created a group on MyPortfolio for the purposes of this training called Unitech Staff, that all staff are encouraged to join. And in that group, we've given them a template at present. And the template is very, very basic. It contains 4 things on it. A picture of a bee on a flower. So most people look at that and go, I don't want that on there. And so they replace it. Job done. And 3 text boxes, one of which has a table that you can see here, which gives them an idea of how they could record the hours that they spend doing professional development, when, and all that sort of stuff. And then 2 boxes that just suggest underneath the picture, how about you write an introduction of who you are here, maybe some of your background, and another one that suggests above the table that they could use that space to import their journal into that page and try and get them to use the journal for reflective practice on their professional development. And so you can see this is actually a screenshot of my one, which I've put some of my professional development in there. And what I do and what I demonstrate to teachers is that for every single professional development that I attend, I create a separate page which contains my evidence and my artifacts of the things that I've created or learnt during that professional development session. And so that's sort of where we're at right now, is we've still got the pilot departments using MyPortfolio the way that they were before. We've started to bring the rest of the staff into looking at e-portfolios, MyPortfolio specifically, but we do mention the fact that they don't have to have MyPortfolio. They can use WordPress or Blogger or some other system. And so we're sort of, where to next? Well, where to next is We need to make sure that all staff do some sort of PD with us. We need to make sure that they, while they're doing PD, and not just the PD on MyPortfolio, but the other professional development, which we also run at Te Puna Ako, which they're now required to do as part of their teaching and learning, that when they run that sort of PD, that they have the opportunity to either create or receive artefacts as part of evidence of that PD. So we need to start rethinking how we deliver professional development so that we integrate digital artefacts into our professional development as well that can then be used and revisited rather than a piece of paper as a handout, which, you know, inevitably gets lost. Keep pushing, keep celebrating any successes that people have. So, you know, we strongly encouraged Claire to come in and do a presentation because she had been very successful with her nursing students in using MyPortfolio, and we're like, we need to celebrate this. We need to make sure that, you know, you understand that we like what you're doing and that it should be shared with other people. And keep learning from our mistakes, and we did make a few along the way. One of which was originally putting off the whole e-portfolio thing because of lack of staffing and not sort of raising that as a flag earlier and going, we need someone like the e-champs to come in and help us get this thing off the ground. Because it was only until they came on board and Karen Haynes, who sort of rallied them all, that actually things started getting traction and started moving. And so we probably should have raised that a lot earlier, and maybe we would have been a lot further along in our journey, but we have started the journey, so we've learned from that, and maybe next time we know that we should say something earlier. So thank you, and that's the most interesting picture I could find of me. And my Twitter handle is over there and my email address is over there if you want to get in contact with me to discuss anything about launching e-portfolios at your institution. I'm really interested to know how other people have launched e-portfolios at their institution, which is partially why I came here. But if you want to know more details about how we've done it, then feel free to contact me. Yeah, that's all.